Just how is the Ghost of Christmas Past presented in Charles Dickens's novella, A Christmas Carol? Let's find out. How's it going, Revision Squad? It is me, Liam, aka Mr. Knight, aka DystopiaJunkie, and today we are going to think about how the Ghost of Christmas Past is presented in Charles Dickens's novella, A Christmas Carol. It might only appear in one of the story's staves, but that does not mean that this is an unimportant character. I can promise you that. As ever, I will be analysing plenty of key quotations in this video, and so you will probably find it useful to grab a pen and some paper now before it gets properly started, just so that you can make some notes as you watch. Oh, a quick reminder too, if you do find this video to be useful at all, please do consider showing your support by giving it a like, writing a comment, subscribing to my channel if you aren't already, sharing this video with friends, classmates, and maybe even your teacher. And if you find everything I do on this channel to be helpful and you really want to show your support, you can also check out my Patreon over at patreon.com/DystopiaJunkie. Any support over there really would be massively appreciated. Anyway, just who is the Ghost of Christmas Past? Before analysing quotations, I think it's really important that we have a think about who or what the character is first. So, if we consider the Ghost of Christmas Past as just a character, we might say that it is the first of three spirits that Marley warned Scrooge of, and that it shows Scrooge various aspects of his past. So, nice and simple really. Of course though, we want to think a bit more deeply than that, don't we? So, if we were to think about this spirit's story role, we could say that Dickens uses it as a vehicle for delivering Scrooge's backstory, which might show how and possibly even why Scrooge became the embittered old miser that he is. Seeing characters as vehicles, as entities that have purposes to advance certain aspects of the narrative, helps you to think a bit more deeply. More analytical thoughts lead to more analytical writing, and guess what? That leads to higher marks. But of course, we can think more deeply still. Could we interpret the Ghost of Christmas Past as a symbol, metaphor, or representation for something or someone else? Well, of course we can. We can first of all think of the symbolic value of light. Under the spirit's cap is an immense light, and guess what? Dickens has not just thrown in a random detail there for the fun of it. Light can be seen as symbolic of a number of things. It could be considered a symbol for purity and goodness and all things holy. Light can also be seen as a symbol of wisdom, because bright light illuminates even the darkest, most secret thing. You also might want to think about this aspect of the spirit in reference to how Scrooge likes darkness. If Scrooge likes darkness, then how might he feel about light and all the things it might represent? Or how about we consider this spirit as being a metaphor for human potential? Now, I will be explaining this idea in quite a bit of detail in just a moment, so just trust me for now, the spirit could be interpreted in this way. Finally, we could even see the Ghost of Christmas Past as having some similarities with Jesus Christ, or the Son figure of the Holy Trinity. This spirit is both a child and a wise old man at the same time, much like how the figure of Jesus Christ was born into the world as a baby that was imbued with the wisdom of God, a timeless entity. Another similarity is that Christ taught people moralistic lessons and showed them how to better themselves, which is more or less what this spirit does too. The idea of the ghosts and their parallels in the Christian faith is something that I will be exploring in a couple of other videos, so do keep it in mind. I think it's a really nice idea that could really help you in your exams. Anyway, that's who the Ghost of Christmas Past is. But which quotations might we discuss in order to analyse them? Before we get properly started, just your standard reminder that all of the page references I mention are for this book, Penguins, A Christmas Carol, and Other Christmas Writings. If you have a different edition of the story, your page numbers will probably be a bit different, but I hope I still make it clear whereabouts in the stave they come from. And actually, before we get properly started, I'll tell you now that I'm going to be treating this specific bit of analysis kind of differently to how I usually analyse quotations in this series. So I'll tell you now that we are going to think about the contradictions in the spirit's appearance and how this could show it to be a metaphor for human potential. So, first of all, we are told that the spirit is like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man. It is simultaneously young and old, an entity whose appearance is that of someone with their entire life ahead of them, and someone whose days are numbered, or, to put it differently, an entity of completely unfulfilled potential, and an entity whose potential has been entirely fulfilled. This idea is seen elsewhere when we learn that its hair is long and white, both of which indicate extreme age, but that it also has the tenderest bloom on its skin, suggesting that it is pink and rosy, just like a baby. That idea of unfulfilled potential and fulfilled potential is really emphasised here. Now, a different kind of contradiction is seen elsewhere, as we are told that the creature's arms are very long and muscular, yet its legs and feet are delicately formed. One body part suggests great strength, whereas the other suggests great feebleness, given that the legs are delicately formed. Now, I don't think Dickens is having a joke here and suggesting that the spirit skips leg day. Instead, I think he is presenting a creature whose entire being is in a constant state of flux, something that is so much and so little at the same time. These contrasting physical details extend even to the spirit's clothing and accessories. You see, by holding a branch of holly in one hand, it carries a wintry emblem, something that is inherently connected to the season that has connotations of coldness, sadness, and even death. However, it also wears summer flowers, which have connotations of warmth, happiness, and life. Now, as if really trying to emphasise the point, Dickens then writes, "The figure itself fluctuated in its distinctness, being now a thing with one arm, now with one leg, now with 20 legs, now a pair of legs without a head, now a head without a body, of which dissolving parts no outline would be visible." In having no fixed form, the spirit could be anything. It could be masculine or feminine, weak or strong, old or young, a many-limbed mess, or something with no legs at all. Now, I've analysed all of these quotations to make it really clear that the spirit has a really contradictory appearance, one that is really quite oxymoronic. This oxymoronic appearance makes the spirit a metaphor for human potential because it is capable of being absolutely anything, just like we are, especially at the beginning of our lives when we have not closed off any of the paths that we might choose to take. Thinking about the spirit's particular story role, it is interesting that it shows Scrooge moments from his past where he had not completely restricted himself to the path of a miser. In showing Scrooge that he was not always this way, the spirit reminds him that he used to have the potential to be so much more than a grumpy old miser, a potential that he still might be able to cling on to just yet. Now, if that analysis is a bit too deep or complex and you need it explaining in more detail, please do let me know down in the comments section and I will happily explain myself a little bit more. If, on the other hand, you just straight up do not like the idea I've just gone through, which, fair enough, you could also discuss then how the spirit's oxymoronic appearance really stresses its etherealness. It is supernatural, otherworldly, strange, not quite human, and clearly capable of things beyond human understanding, which immediately creates a power imbalance between it and Scrooge, in which the old man is the inferior party. Alright, time to talk about something a bit more straightforward. As it shows Scrooge his past, the ghost stopped at a certain warehouse door and asked Scrooge if he knew it. Now I argue that this quotation shows the spirit to be omniscient, which is a fancy way of saying all-knowing. The reason why I say this is that the phrase "a certain warehouse" implies that Scrooge and the spirit are in a location that is full of plenty of warehouses or similar buildings, thanks to the indefinite article "a", which has been used instead of the definite article "the". And despite the fact that there are so many warehouses in this area, the spirit has been able to take Scrooge to the particular one that means so much to him: Fezziwig's. In being able to take Scrooge to such an important place in his past, a place that even Scrooge has trouble recalling since he has to ask, "Was I apprenticed here?" it seems that the spirit knows Scrooge's past better than even he does, which might present the spirit as omniscient. This extreme knowledge, the fact that it apparently knows Scrooge better than he knows himself, is yet another of the spirit's supernatural qualities. It certainly shows capabilities beyond that of any human being. Now, I won't be discussing any of the other quotations that show this spirit to be omniscient, as I think the quotation I've just mentioned presents it best. So, if you like this idea, I suggest you analyse the quotation that's on your screen now. One of the final things I think we can say about the presentation of the Ghost of Christmas Past becomes evident in the next quotation. In commenting on how happy Fezziwig made people just by throwing a party, the spirit pointedly says to Scrooge, "A small matter," said the ghost, "to make these silly folks so full of gratitude." If you are going to use informal language here, you might say that the spirit is being somewhat preachy, because it is very clearly trying to teach Scrooge a moral lesson, which is that using a little bit of wealth can bring people an awful lot of happiness. Now, of course, we don't want to be using informal language in our essays, as that will make it more difficult to reach the top grades. So what words could we use instead to describe this specific presentation of the Ghost of Christmas Past? Well, you could use moralistic or teacherly or even didactic, which is just a real fancy way of saying teaching with moral lessons as a focus. But here's the thing, the spirit's didactic behaviour is seen elsewhere in the story. Consider how it is presented in the following quotation. But the relentless ghost pinioned him in both his arms and forced him to observe what happened next. The spirit does this when it shows Scrooge how happy Belle is later in life without him. Now, of course, the verb forced shows just how much the spirit impels Scrooge, but that language analysis would be a bit boring, as you would essentially be saying that the verb force shows just how much the spirit forces Scrooge, which is repetitive and boring. Why not instead look at the verb pinioned? To pinion someone is to restrain them, and so it shows that the spirit is so hell-bent on making sure that Scrooge learns his lesson that it exerts physical force on him and makes him do something against his will. But wait, you can actually analyse that verb even more deeply. You see, to pinion someone does mean to restrain them, but it also has a more specific meaning too. You can also pinion birds, which is the specific surgical removal of the pinion joint. This act permanently stops birds from being able to fly. As such, you could even argue that this particular language choice presents Scrooge as poor and defenceless and almost like he's being assaulted, just like a bird when it is pinioned. And as such, the ghost might even seem cruel, or excessively forceful, or wholly manipulative. Now, whichever meaning of pinioned you decide to analyse, I would say that this quotation still shows the ghost of Christmas past to be didactic, but I would say that it develops this idea and shows it to be ruthlessly didactic. It is teaching Scrooge a lesson, for sure, but it's not exactly going about this in a nice way. Alright, so that's the analysis of those quotations over. So, how could we summarise the ghost of Christmas past in just a couple of sentences? Well, you could say, a being of no fixed form, the ghost of Christmas past's oxymoronic appearance is representative of human potential. Apparently omniscient, the spirit's didactic purposes become clear as the second stave progresses. Because the ghost of Christmas past only appears relatively early on in the narrative, it is possible that you might forget things about it by the time you finish reading A Christmas Carol in full, and so you might find it useful to copy down this quick summary. It should help you if you're given an exam-style question that focuses solely on this particular spirit, and the summary, as well as the video at large, might also help you to think about the theme of the supernatural, given that the ghost of Christmas past is the second of 4 spectral visitors that Scrooge receives. I will eventually be covering that theme in its own video, but I hope that this one, along with my video on Marley and eventual videos about the other 2 ghosts, will do as a decent starting point for now. And before the video ends, I would like to leave you with a quick question that you could choose to reflect on. So, considering only the ghost of Christmas past, how would you describe A Christmas Carol's presentation of the supernatural? Do whatever you want with that question. Make a mind map, chat with your classmates about it, use it as the title for an essay, and so on. If you want to write a quick little analytical paragraph down in the comments section, please do feel free to, because I absolutely love seeing your ideas and I'm usually pretty good at responding to them too, so you'll even get a bit of feedback from me. And there we go, that is my analysis of the Ghost of Christmas Past complete. I really do hope that this video has helped you out in some way. Whether you're revising for exams, studying A Christmas Carol for the first time, or, you just have a passing interest in Charles Dickens's writing. If you want to show your support and appreciation, I'm sure you know what to do. Anyway, as ever, I hope that you have an awesome rest of the day. If you are revising, please do remember to take frequent short breaks, as a burned out student is not a happy or successful student, which is what I think you deserve to be. So just how is the Ghost of Christmas Past presented in A Christmas Carol? Well, it is an otherworldly and apparently omniscient entity that is clearly determined to make Scrooge learn his lesson.